It was supposed to be the night that changed everything. The night that made her believe life could still surprise her with something beautiful after so many disappointments. But as Emily Carter stood outside the glass doors of Le Mistral, the most elegant French restaurant in downtown Seattle, her reflection stared back at her like a reminder of everything she wasn't. Behind her was the cold wind biting at her skin, and inside, soft music, golden light, and people who looked like they belonged to a different world. She took a deep breath, fixed the single loose strand of hair that refused to stay in place, and whispered to herself, "You can do this." Yet, deep inside, she wasn't so sure. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of love that finds us when we least expect it, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Because tonight's story will remind you that sometimes the smallest gestures can change everything. Emily had never been the kind of woman who fit in at fancy places. Her world was one of thrift stores, secondhand books, and takeout meals eaten on her small kitchen counter. She worked double shifts at a local diner, saving every dollar to pay off her mother's medical bills. When her friend Lisa had insisted on setting her up on a blind date, Emily had almost laughed. "A blind date? With who? Prince Charming?" she had said, half joking, half tired. But Lisa had been persistent. "He's different, Em. Trust me. You deserve to meet someone who sees you for who you are." And so, Emily had agreed. She had borrowed a navy blue dress from Lisa's closet, painted her nails for the first time in months, and told herself she'd just enjoy one evening pretending life was easier than it really was. The moment she walked into Le Mistral, her stomach tightened. Everything smelled of luxury, the scent of expensive perfume, the gleam of wine glasses, the soft hum of foreign accents. A hostess in a crisp uniform smiled politely and led her to a table near the window. And there he was, Daniel Walker. He stood up as she approached, tall, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his eyes kind but sharp, the kind that noticed everything. "Emily?" he said with a smile that seemed genuine, not forced. She nodded, her voice caught somewhere between nerves and disbelief. Daniel was the kind of man who looked like he had his life together, confident, warm, easy to talk to. Within minutes, Emily found herself laughing at his stories about getting lost on a hiking trip, and for a brief while, she forgot the world outside that restaurant. But then, the waiter placed the menus in front of them, and everything inside her changed. Each page was a shock, prices that made her throat dry, $45 for soup, $60 for an entree. She stared at the numbers, her heart pounding, her fingers gripping the leather edge of the menu as if she could hide behind it. She didn't dare look up. What if Daniel noticed her panic? What if he thought she didn't belong here? She could feel her cheeks growing warm as her eyes darted from one dish to another, searching for something, anything, that didn't cost her week's groceries. The waiter returned, his polite smile hovering. "Have you decided, miss?" Emily forced a smile and said softly, "Just water for now." Daniel glanced at her, his brow slightly furrowed, then looked back at his menu. "You sure? The food here is really good," she nodded quickly. "I'm not that hungry." It was a lie. She hadn't eaten since morning, saving what little she had to look presentable tonight. The evening went on, but Emily's mind wasn't on the conversation anymore. She kept thinking about how small she felt in that place, how her dress, though lovely, wasn't designer, how her shoes were slightly scuffed, how she didn't understand half the words on that menu. She thought about her mother back home, sitting in a small living room, waiting for her to return with the leftover diner pie. She always brought on weekends. Daniel noticed her distance. "You okay?" he asked gently. She forced another smile, hiding behind her glass of water. "Yeah, just a long day." But he could see something behind her eyes, something fragile, something she was too proud to admit. He didn't press, but his gaze softened. When the food arrived, his food, she watched quietly as he took a bite, her stomach twisting with quiet hunger. He noticed the way she looked away, and for a moment he understood. When the check came, Daniel reached for it instinctively, but Emily stopped him. "No, please, I'll pay for my part." He looked confused, then amused. "It's okay, Emily, I asked you out." But she shook her head, her pride sharper than her fear. "I don't want to owe anyone anything," she said quietly. Something about the way she said it, soft but firm, made him stop arguing. He nodded slowly, letting her hold on to the dignity she was fighting so hard to protect. After dinner, as they walked outside, the city lights flickering around them, Emily felt small against the glittering skyline. She could feel her heart breaking. Not because of Daniel, but because this night had reminded her of the distance between who she was and who she wished she could be. Daniel offered to walk her to her car, but she declined. "It's okay," she said. "I'll catch the bus." He hesitated, then smiled gently. "All right. It was really nice meeting you." She smiled back, but as he walked away, she felt her eyes sting. The night air was cold, but not as cold as the emptiness that followed her all the way to the bus stop. The next morning, Emily returned to her world. The smell of coffee and bacon at the diner, the clatter of plates, the endless rhythm of taking orders and wiping tables. She told herself that last night was just a dream she couldn't afford. But later that afternoon, as she was refilling coffee for a regular, she looked up and froze. It was Daniel. He was standing by the door, wearing jeans and a simple jacket this time, holding a small paper bag. He smiled when he saw her, but she was too stunned to move. "I hope it's okay that I stopped by," he said, stepping closer. "You mentioned you worked here." Emily nodded, confused. "Yeah, but why?" He placed the paper bag on the counter. "You left your scarf in the restaurant." She blinked. "Oh, I didn't even realize." He smiled again, then added, "Also, I thought maybe next time we could try a place that doesn't charge more for soup than I paid for my first car." She laughed despite herself. "Next time? Only if you'll let me buy you coffee first." There was something in his tone, not pity, but warmth, genuine interest, the kind that didn't care about where she came from or what she could afford. Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, coffee sounds nice." Over the next few weeks, Daniel kept showing up, sometimes for lunch, sometimes just for a quick coffee. He didn't make grand gestures or expensive plans, he just listened. He learned about her mother's health, about the way Emily had given up college to take care of her, about her dreams of becoming a teacher someday. He told her about his own mistakes, the career paths that didn't work out, the loneliness that success couldn't fill. Slowly, piece by piece, they began to understand each other. One evening, months later, Daniel asked if she'd like to take a walk by the lake. The air was cool, the sunset painting the water in soft gold. They sat on a bench, watching the ripples shimmer. "You know," Daniel said quietly, "that night at Le Mistral, I realized something." Emily turned to him. "What?" "I realized that sometimes the best people are the ones who don't fit into fancy places. They're too real for that world." She looked down, smiling softly. "You don't have to say that to make me feel better." He shook his head. "I'm not. You taught me something that night. That kindness and pride can exist together. That it's okay to not have everything figured out as long as you have honesty." Emily's eyes glistened. "I didn't think I taught you anything. I just didn't want to feel small." "You never were small," he said gently. "You just didn't see what I saw." And for the first time in a long time, she believed it. Months passed, and their connection deepened into something real. Not built on wealth or appearances, but on the quiet, beautiful truth that two imperfect people could find something perfect in each other. Daniel helped her apply for night classes. Emily, in turn, reminded him of what mattered. Simplicity, authenticity, love without pretense. A year later, she graduated with a teaching certificate. On the day of her ceremony, Daniel waited outside with a bouquet of wildflowers, the kind that grew freely, beautifully, without permission. When she saw him, tears welled in her eyes. "You didn't have to," she said, smiling through her tears. "I wanted to," he replied softly. "You once couldn't afford the menu, now you've written your own story." She laughed, that same shy, radiant smile that had once hidden behind uncertainty, and as they walked away together, hand in hand, the city lights reflecting off the lake, Emily thought back to that first night, the one that had felt like a failure. She realized now that it wasn't the night that broke her, it was the night that began to rebuild her. Because sometimes, the most beautiful beginnings hide behind moments of quiet embarrassment, small heartbreaks, and courage that no one sees. If this story touched your heart, if you believe love can grow even from the most uncertain places, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more real, emotional stories like this one to life. And before we end, tell us in the comments, would you choose love even if it came wrapped in struggle? Emily did, and in doing so she learned that the richest hearts don't need fancy menus. They just need someone who sees them for who they truly are.